Hi, I'm Erin Marcus. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. All right. Welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I'm excited for today's guest, Divya Ramachandran, who we were having so much fun talking about how we're all responsible for our own catastrophe. That whole thing about this self-awareness that as we've grown up, we realize adults don't have it figured out. None of us have it figured out. And I can't wait to get into, all right, if none of us already have it figured out, what can we do to at least make our worlds better in the process? So before we get into all of it, why don't you tell everybody a little officially who you are and what you do?
Thanks so much, Erin. It's really great to be here. So yes, a little bit about me. I help leaders do hard things. That's in a nutshell, what I do. So specifically, what I'm doing is I'm helping leaders find clarity on these big, complex, ambiguous tasks, right? Trying to figure out, how do I move forward on this? But also the other hard thing that leaders have to do is get other people to do hard things. Right?
Right. It'd be easy if everyone just did what you told them. Right?
Exactly, but that is hard, and that can consistently be hard. And so what I'm helping leaders do is have that hard conversations they need to have, influencing up the ladder, across to their peers, help their teams, the people on their teams do the things they need to. So it's just helping everyone move forward and do the hard things they need to make progress. And primarily I work in the tech industry. I have a background in tech. The leadership problems are the same, whether you're in tech or anywhere else. And that's what I do.
Love it. Love it. Love it. It's so true, because I think this is one of those, truthfully, I watch this in the entrepreneur world, right? I come out of corporate, I had the big fancy corporate leadership job, and then I was in entrepreneur world, am in entrepreneur world still. And these problems are pervasive.
Yeah.
However, my opinion, it's almost worse or harder or potentially more damaging when your ability to maneuver through these relationships and be a leader has such a direct impact on your income. Like, we all know leaders who get to still be leaders at their job and they still get the paycheck. But when you own your own business, that leadership skill, and it's not just team, right? It's not just your direct reports, it's vendors, it's clients, it's prospects, it's joint venture partners, like it's everything.
Yeah. It is just so much pressure to have to hold on to that. Just as an entrepreneur, you're coming in, and you're right. As soon as you're connecting every conversation, every little win with, is money going into the bank?
Yes.
Automatically are like, the default is to just be in that scarcity mindset, right? Just thinking it's not enough. I need to get this. I need to win this. And when you operate from that place of pressure, though, you just don't get the results you need to. So it's like, you have to be able to have the skill set you need to find abundance, find all that openness and confidence that you need to have those conversations to actually put the money in the bank.
Right. It's becomes multi-layered. Not that it's not multi-layered in corporate, but it becomes multi-layered because you got to do that inner work. But then you need the tactical skills. This is, like we were chatting, one of the funniest pieces of awareness, things that I became aware of as I got older, was I really expected that there was, this is so stupid, but I really expected in hindsight that it is this magical age where eventually you grew up and were mature, right? And what I came to realize is, no, it's almost worse, because you've now gone longer in your pattern. You've now gone longer in your habits.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so right. I'm still waiting for that age to come. If there is one.
I'm 54. It hasn't happened. It's still evasive, right?
And I think it's both empowering and intimidating at the same time to realize that so much is in your own hands, right? When you realize that, oh, this is my pattern, my belief that is causing this. Yeah, it's on me, and it's really hard to hold that. But at the same time, you're like, oh, but it's on me. Like, I can change this. I don't need 4 people around me to change. I can change the situation by actually working on myself and building that self-awareness.
And that was so hard. I will tell you, the first time I learned that concept, I was in my I was in my mid-30s. I was getting my MBA, and it's a dual focus in marketing and executive leadership. And so I was in one of those leadership classes and facilitated by a woman who's an executive coach for NASA. She's like the coolest person ever.
Wow.
And she's telling us that every relationship we have is our own fault. Now, here's the thing. I was just coming out of a divorce, and the last thing I was interested in hearing was how any of this was my fault.
Yeah. Totally.
But to your point, it took me a minute. It is now the most empowering thing that I know.
Yeah.
Right? That I can control my response, that I get to choose how I think is the most empowering thing that I know.
It really is. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. There's a little, I guess, a little thing that I learned in my leadership training program as well. Just this phrase that all conflict is self-conflict. And when you realize that, okay, I have this colleague that I'm constantly butting heads with, there's constant tension here, and it's their fault. When my clients come to me talking about this person is just, they don't see it. They're doing it this way. I know I've been here before. I know the right way. And you're just coming in with this lens that I'm right, they're wrong. And all of that conflict, when you break it down and look into it, you're like, okay, let's talk a little bit about your perspective here, and why are you the one that's right? And what are you afraid of about?
That's the worst question in the universe. So what are you actually afraid? Because it's always that.
Yeah.
And as someone who has always had a fair amount of self-confidence, like the last thing I used to ever want to hear was that it was all fear underlying, because that was very opposite of who I saw myself as.
Yeah, it can be really hard to do. So recognize that there's just a lot of our own fears or our own patterns, our own beliefs, all of these things that are under the hood. It can be really hard to dig it up. And again, so empowering.
The other thing is, I'm thinking about how this comes out to play. One of the things that I used to do was teach generational communication processes and things, because each generation does communicate differently. And one of my clients had boomer mechanics, millennial female at the front desk, and then they just function differently. So what's interesting to me is each generation has their own way to fight against it, but the problem's the same. So you can complain that a younger generation doesn't have the resilience to handle the conflict, but at the same time, the older generation was taught, the white male older generation thinks they're correct by default, just by existing. But at the end of the day, the problem's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. This is you were asking me in our conversation earlier before we started, you were just chatting about what is the current issue that I'm thinking about. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the current issue, but there's nothing current about it. It's age old. It's
age old issue.
But that when we have strong connections of trust with other individuals, we feel better, we get more done, we achieve more. And when we are in conflict or have tension with another, let's just say a colleague in the work context, when we have that, we feel stressed, we burn out, we feel pressure, we want to quit, all of that. And it all comes down to like, how are we able to understand other individuals, whether they're the same generation or others, whether they're our boss or our direct reports, how are we able to understand them? Are we bringing curiosity to those conversations, or are we just constantly judging them? And are we caught up in our own judgment and our own beliefs? Are we wearing these glasses and say these are the only glasses one can look at a situation with, or not? And so it all comes down to that.
And to bring it back to something you've already said, when you now add a direct tie to your income, right? The desperation and the insecurity. I watch this manifest in people saying yes to clients they should have said no to, because they want the money, or they're convinced they have to say yes. As opposed in corporate world, you're pretty much trapped, and it's a different stress. But in the entrepreneur world, you're somewhat trapped as well if you're being driven by, I have to make that sale.
Yeah.
And so now, to like you were saying, you're going to end up stressed and exhausted. Your satisfaction goes down. So, okay, instead of thinking you're quitting your job, you're like, do I really even want to do this business? And it's all really rooted
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
what? A lack of self-awareness, a lack of a toolkit to do anything differently.
Yeah. Yeah. As humans, we are hardwired to need to protect ourselves. And that's just our biological need, right? When we're, if we go back to when we really didn't have all the resources we needed or that we have now, the only things we were thinking about was how can I survive? How is this a threat to my life?
Right.
And do I have people around me? Because again, if I don't have people around me, it's also a threat to my life because I need this community. And so our two most fundamental fears are around insecurity. So around ultimately when we start thinking about insecurity related finances, what we're concerned about biologically is, am I going to end up on the street and die because I have nothing? And then the second piece of it is, do I have people? Do people approve of me? Do people understand me? Do people accept me? Right? Because you want that sense of belonging. And so our deep fear is about being ostracized socially. And these are all our fundamental biological needs. And I'm bringing this up because that's what we're hardwired to. And so it's very normal for us to default to that kind of neediness or desperation in every situation. The problem is when we are driven by that kind of energy inside of us that is all focused on that fight or flight, can I get through this? What we're doing is we're narrowing our entire vision onto the one thing that's stressing us out the most. It stresses me out, this meeting, I need to get it done. Like all of our vision is on there, which means we lose sight of the bigger picture. We don't see what our alternatives are. We don't see what our options are. And so the work that really helps leaders and entrepreneurs at this time is to actually, when you build that self-awareness, it's not just about admitting your mistakes, right? Like the idea of self-awareness is you notice like, hey, I'm in this scarcity mode. I'm in this like fighting, flight, fleeing mode, and I'm not looking at my other alternatives. But if I did, I could actually have all these other options for me that are actually way better for me. Like not closing this client, but focusing all my energy over there on that one is actually going to be better for me in the long run. And you need to be able to practice that or build that skill set to be able to make it happen.
And I think that's an important distinction because I think there is all too many times a poo-pooing of this type of stuff because an assumption is being made that you just want me to admit everything I do is wrong. And that's not what we're talking about. Like, no, that it's not to make you wrong or bad. It's actually opposite. You said the exact same things that I say all the time. And to me, it's give yourself a break. You're up against neuroscience.
Right.
You're not wrong or bad. It's neuroscience. It's how it works.
Yes.
But are you going to choose to be stuck as a victim to chemicals?
Yeah.
Or are you going to choose to be in charge of your outcomes?
So well said. I love that word choose. I think that's the whole point, right? When you build awareness and that unlocks your choice. You realize I'm at choice. I can choose for this relationship to continue to be sour and to be the bane of my existence and make me want to quit. Or I can choose to try something else out to make this actually work better.
And then if it goes too far, you can do what my brother and I both tend to do. We've learned it's a personality glitch directly related to my dad is when I know you're a jerk and I know how to push your buttons, I will do it on purpose to entertain myself. And my brother and I do the same thing. So this is the downside of self-awareness. Okay? So I got to know, like, how did this become your thing? Why this?
Yeah, so I actually have a background in tech. So studied engineering in college and actually got into my dream school for grad school. I wanted to go to Berkeley. I wanted to get a PhD. It was in the computer science department. I was like all set on this goal. And I got to Berkeley and started my research and realized that there was no topic of interest to me. I was not interested in making computers better. I was just not interested in technology problems. And I hadn't realized that until then. I was just
You were a kid. That's one of the like, who knows what they actually want to do when they're 12? Like,
exactly. So that was like my first big, it felt like a really early life crisis where I was just like, wow, I thought this was my dream. I thought this is what I wanted to do. Anyway, that's when I realized what I cared about more was people problems. And so I identified part of the department which was really working on how do we design products to help people. So we're really studying how people work, how people think, and then really thinking about how do we now design products in that space. So for several years after that I got my PhD in that space, but also then worked for a decade or more at several Bay Area startups, thinking about San Francisco Bay Area startups.
Twice studying before about geography.
But really, I was thinking about user experience design and product management, and this is what I was doing. Finally, when I was leading a team of user experience and product managers, and we were working on this complicated AI product, things were tough. And I ended up working with an executive coach to see how can I deal with some of the conflict and how can I improve some of the management of my team. And just right from the start, I was just enamored by the whole process. I was enamored by the concepts and the tools that I was learning. And long story short, I ended up leaving that job quite burnt out and was shopping around trying to figure out, like, I know that's not the right role for me. So what should I do next? And so I signed up for a coach training program almost on a whim. And from day one, it was so clear that this was it. This was what I was going to do. So it was just like this flash of intuition, like absolutely.
And isn't that amazing? Like, it just dissect those feelings. Like, even just you telling the story, the energy, or like the light bulb, this is it, is so different than, that was not for me. And I think people don't realize you have permission to follow the lighter energy.
Totally. Yeah, there's just so many rules, so many beliefs that we have, so many kind of expectations. I was
gonna say parents' expectations.
Right. I was 12 years old. I had the whole plan out. So that's when I had to follow. No, but you really don't. And it still feels very fluid for me. There's just so many different possibilities, different ideas, and being able to find that comfort and to listen to the intuition, but also feel comfortable doing that's ongoing work.
And then, so you say that, and it's something that I recently discovered, at least putting some language around it about myself, because I have a very segmented past where whether it was school or jobs, where I stayed at a certain job for X amount of time and then I left. And I'm even making changes in my business right now that to many people, they're like, what? And what I realized is I was telling myself I was wrong for not sticking with one thing forever, because that's what people are like, that's what you do. You figure out what you're doing. And I'm a lifelong learner. And it finally clicked that once I learn how to do something, I don't want to play with it anymore. I'm not competitive enough to where, like, I got to make millions and millions of dollars. And that means I know what it is. And just getting to that point where you can trust yourself enough to know you'll always be okay. You can trust the universe enough to know about the abundance. And then let go of all of the expectations of what other people's definitions are of doing a good job, not doing a good job, or any of those things.
Yeah. All of the above. I just completely agree with all of it. And I feel the same. My business is still in flux, the way I'm thinking about it, the ideas, and my mindset's also in flux. There are times when I'm looking at the rules and looking at other people and thinking, oh, I should be doing it this way, that way, and I'm shitting on myself. And ultimately, I have to work alongside my clients on nurturing that.
It's a journey.
This is my path. I get to find it. I get to figure out what's my intuition telling me and follow that. And
one of the things you said earlier was, can you learn how to go into the conflict, go into the conversation from a standpoint of curiosity? But what if you do that for yourself as well?
Yeah, I think curiosity it's probably it's the antidote. It's like the answer to everything. Right?
Totally, 100%.
Conflict, go in with curiosity, try to understand what the other person's thinking, and then judgment towards yourself. When you're judging yourself, just get curious about it. Why am I feeling this way? And most likely it's because there's some belief that I'm holding on to, whose the source of that is
Lord only knows, could be anything.
It could be anything, but it's a long time ago and it's actually irrelevant. And just to get curious about what's another way to look at this situation.
Love it. So if people want to continue this conversation with you and learn more about you, how to get a hold of you, all those things, what is the best way to find them, for them to find you? Yeah, so LinkedIn is the place where I love to connect with people. So please find me there.
you'll be sharing the link.
Yes,
maybe?
we'll put the links and the correct spelling of your name and all of
Yes.
the things. Make you
Great.
one
I
click
want to spell
away.
that. Yes, but please find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, send me a note, tell me you heard me on this podcast, and I would love to chat. And then I have a website, divyalalika.com, which hopefully you'll be able
Yep,
to
we'll
put
put that
show
all
notes
the
as well.
all the links in
And
there.
over there, there's a place where you can actually sign up for my newsletter. I send
Oh,
a
nice.
little newsletter once a week. And I also have a little free download for you as well that you can get a look at from the show notes again. And this is a little one, so it's a one pager that helps you think through how do you have hard conversations and steps you through a path to get from kind of a place of emotional clarity to being able to have a conversation that's clear. So I'd
Love
love
it.
for
And I
that.
think that helps. I think having a crutch, a tool, makes you brave.
Yeah,
So
totally. I love
go
that.
have the hard conversations. Love it. Thank
Mhm.
you for hanging out with me today and
Thanks
sharing
for
all
having
of
me.
this. I love this type of conversation. It changes everything. It's one of the most important things that you really can do for yourself. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a really great chat.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I truly enjoy bringing these stories of success and inspiration to you. Please join us in our mission to empower entrepreneurs to be in charge of their businesses and in charge of their lives by sharing this with anyone you know who would benefit from our tactical and motivating advice, leaving us a review, and letting us know if there are any particular topics you would really appreciate hearing about. See you next time.